and sure has been U.S. retaliation for communist PT boat attacks on the high seas. This is the Maddox, one of the two destroyers that were attacked while patrolling international waters in the Gulf of Tonkin near North Vietnam. Warplanes from two carriers, the Ticonderoga and the Constellation, avenged the unwarranted red assault with 64 sorties to North Vietnam PT bases.
This new act of aggression, aimed directly at our own forces, again brings home to all of us in the United States the importance of the struggle for peace and security in Southeast Asia. Aggression by terror against the peaceful villagers of South Vietnam has now been joined by open aggression on the high seas against the United States of America. The determination of all Americans to carry out our full commitment to the people and to the government of South Vietnam will be redoubled by this outrage.
Reinforcements are being moved into strategic locations as part of a new strategy in this frustrating war. This is not to force a showdown with the Reds, but to emphasize the U.S. wish to contain the war. Interceptor and fighter bomber aircraft are being flown into South Vietnam and Thailand rapidly, as other air squadrons are transferred from the United States to advanced bases in the Pacific. As always, political differences faded in the United States, and leaders of both parties united behind the president to grant him all powers necessary to carry out our commitments to defend world peace.
LBJ had the support of both allies and enemies, partly because the nation was in a state of shock. The tragic assassination of John F. Kennedy the previous fall had put the weight of the world on LBJ.
I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God's. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear.
The world indeed mourned. In Boston, as elsewhere, memorial services were held for the late president. This special pontifical mass was celebrated by Cardinal Cushing, who paid tribute to the courage of the Kennedys. A bereaved country joined with Boston in honoring her native son, and later Jacqueline Kennedy said her thanks to the nation.
I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the hundreds of thousands of messages, nearly 800,000 in all, which my children and I have received over the past few weeks. The knowledge of the affection in which my husband was held by all of you has sustained me, and the warmth of these tributes is something I shall never forget. Whenever I can bear to, I read them. All his bright light gone from the world. All of you who have written to me know how much we all loved him, and that he returned that love in full measure. It is my greatest wish that all of these letters be acknowledged. They will be, but it will take a long time to do so. But I know you will understand. Each and every message is to be treasured, not only for my children, but so that future generations will know how much our country and people in other nations thought of him.
While President Kennedy belongs to the ages, the legacy he left behind will be his monument to coming generations. A chapter that recorded for history the story of a changing world has come to an end. Jawaharlal Nehru is dead. The man who became the first prime minister of the country he led along the road to independence has succumbed to a heart attack after suffering a stroke earlier this year. These are the last pictures of the prime minister made just a month before his death. He was conferring with Sheikh Abdullah, a figure long involved in India's dispute with Pakistan over Kashmir. Mr. Nehru, as a young man, acquired a political acumen that complemented the spiritual appeal of that architect of India's freedom, Mohandas Gandhi. On the banks of the Jumna, a funeral pyre has been prepared just 300 yards from where Mahatma Gandhi was cremated. Nations from both sides of the Iron Curtain are here, with Lord Mountbatten representing Queen Elizabeth. Secretary of State Dean Rusk and Lord Home are also official representatives. Mr. Nehru's daughter and her son represent the family in the Hindu rites that call for the cremation within a day of death. When the torch lights the bier that is covered with sandalwood and incense, the curtain falls on a brilliant career. The India that mourns her patriotic son must now turn to the future, bend to the task of carrying out the high ideals that were set by Nehru, the man who helped create a great nation. The official Russian announcement said he resigned. The Reds say ill health prompted Khrushchev to step down. Observers say that his abortive feud with Red China that broke apart the front of monolithic communism was the real reason. A man who clawed and fought his way to the top, wooed leaders like Nasser of the neutralist nations. The crowds that once cheered Khrushchev wildly were left in the dark as to just what went on when the Central Committee met to act on his retirement and to name Leonid Brezhnev as the new leader of the party, while Alexei Kosygin took the job of premier. Brezhnev has lately been considered Khrushchev's heir apparent, but the question remains as to whether he had anything to do with hurrying his boss's departure. Khrushchev probably made his greatest impact on a strangely fascinated world when he came to the United Nations Assembly in 1960 and attempted to purge Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld. He piled shock upon shock when he and the Soviet delegation rudely interrupted speeches by Western delegates. Now, for better or worse, the Khrushchev era has come to a close. The beginning of the most successful probe in the history of the space age. The Ranger 7 is ready for launch at Cape Kennedy to photograph the moon's surface before astronauts attempt a landing. It is one of the smoothest takeoffs on record, as the 800-pound spacecraft is lifted into space and sent on its 240,000-mile journey. The Ranger program has been a frustrating one. Just 6 months ago, the Ranger 6 failed just as it reached the moon. But today's effort is successful beyond all dreams. 16 minutes before the Ranger is to crash, the cameras go on, and the first of thousands of pictures is transmitted to Earth. From 480 miles, it pictures the moon as it might appear on a photograph made from Earth. 470 miles, this shows an area about 78 miles on each side. This is more than man has ever seen of the moon before. 235 miles. The smallest craters here are about 1,000 feet in diameter and are shown in resolution about 4 times Earth-based photography. 3 miles and 2 seconds before impact, more is revealed to man than he has ever known before about the moon. The smallest craters are about 30 feet in diameter and 10 feet deep. 1,000 feet up, the last picture before impact shows an area of 100 by 60 feet, the size of a city lot. A moment later, impact. The random pattern records the landing. Thus ends the historic voyage of Ranger 7, a voyage that has projected man across new thresholds into space and closer to a landing on the moon. The fastest man on wheels sets a new world's record. Donald Campbell readies his Bluebird on the sands of Lake Eyre in Australia that is smoothed out for his assault on the speed mark. Campbell is the son of the late Sir Malcolm Campbell, longtime record holder, but with the aid of his mascot, he's about to make his father's mark look as if it had been made in city traffic. The rules call for a run in each direction over a measured mile. To get up to speed and slow down entails a run of about 15 miles. The young speed demon has little trouble shattering the world mark. His jet-powered racer hits nearly 400 miles an hour on the first pass. he averages out at better than 403 miles an hour. That's about 260 miles an hour faster than his father's record. Oh, this younger generation. Australia is getting in the rocket race on a one-man scale. At Sydney, they unveiled the down-under version of how to go over the top without much effort. Both Britain and the U.S. are developing these rocket lifters for troops in the field. And the Australian pogo stick seems to be among the most successful. When Bob Corder makes the first public solo hop, our cameraman swears he saw 18 kangaroos run for cover. In 17 seconds, Bob travels 120 yards. By the way, anyone for leapfrog? A 12-foot crate is all that is needed to transport this tiny helicopter to the scene of action. At Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, the DO-32 is ready for flight within 5 minutes, ready to go into action as an observer plane or in support of ground troops. The shipping crate is used as the launching pad for this 330-pound jet-powered chopper. Developed in West Germany, the Sky motorcycle has a rotor that operates without gears or transmission. Its only power coming from compressed air generated by the jet engine. Airborne in a flash, this half-pint is as maneuverable as its bigger brothers. Military authorities feel that this tiny copter has unlimited possibilities in combat. We know a lot of civilians who would like to lay their hands on one also. Observers were deeply impressed with this unusual aerospace vehicle. Easily flown with a minimum of instruction, it can come in to land on a dime and have change left over for gas. Has taken as its theme man's achievements in an expanding universe. Its purpose, an ambitious one, peace through understanding. 66 foreign nations are represented, including 24 African countries that didn't exist a few years ago. The international area offers a sampling of life in countries many of us never even hoped to visit. You can go east to Pakistan, and when you've seen everything there, detour to Japan. Then a side trip to Thailand, and after that, it's on to India. After a leisurely visit in the Philippines, across the seas to Berlin. Then back to Hollywood and all of the glamour of the movie capital. The millions who will visit the New York World's Fair in the next 2 years will also gaze on a glamorous new sports center, Shea Stadium. The spanking new park is dedicated by Mayor Robert Wagner and manager Casey Stengel of the New York Mets. There's a massive traffic jam as 50,000 fans flock to the season's opener. But all of the irritations and frustrations are forgotten in the plush splendor of the new park. No need to walk. 21 escalators whisk you to all levels. Scoreboard can play back outstanding fielding and batting plays immediately, but everyone agreed that no one would want a playback of Casey leading Guy Lombardo's orchestra. This was one of the few sour notes heard all day. Historians were quick to note that on opening day, the last place Mets drew 50,000 fans, while the New York Yankees, perennial winners, drew only 12,000 on their opener the day before. We don't like to mention it, of course, but the Mets lost their first game in the new stadium when Pittsburgh downed them 4-3. But just wait till tomorrow, or the next day, or the next. The Olympic torch is about to be extinguished in a blaze of glory by the U.S. track team. In the 400-meter relay, the American quartet is off to a flying start as Paul Drayton runs the first leg. The U.S. holds both the present Olympic and world records in this event, but both marks go by the board today. It's Jerry Ashworth running the second leg And he passes the baton to Dick Stebbins, who is off on the third 100-meter lap. Then Stebbins passes to Bob Hayes, and watch that man take off. Hayes, left, literally flies down the track as he heads for the wire to make it 39 seconds flat for the U.S. Hayes and company contribute brilliantly to the U.S. gold medal total of 36. The 18th modern Olympics is then brought to a close in moving ceremonies that ring down the curtain in Olympic Stadium. In contrast to the formal entry on opening day, the teams mingle together in an atmosphere of exuberance and regret. Not until 1968 will there be another meeting like this one. Olympic torch is extinguished, not to brighten the horizons of international sportsmanship until it is relit in Mexico City. An honor guard carries the Olympic banner from the stadium as 200 torches make a jeweled circle of friendship as the Japanese word for farewell goes up on the scoreboard. It's sayonara to the first Olympic Games to be held in the Far East. Hasta la vista in Mexico.
Biggest news in the world of sports was Cassius Clay.
Yeah, I've had 180 amateur fights, World Olympic gold medal winning gold medalist, 2-time United States Golden Glove champion, 2-time United States AAU champion, Pan American champion, Diamond Belt champion, a world stock and ranking heavyweight, and I'm as pretty as you, and you're not a fighter.
Besides his fists, his most potent weapon was his mouth.
So when the gong rings and the referee sings out, the winner, and Sonny Liston will fall, Cassius Clay will be the noblest Roman of them all.
Liston fell, Clay was champion, and he didn't hesitate to say so.
Put him in the hospital. He's never been stopped. He's never been wrong. Oh, I'm so great. Oh, I'm so great. Oh, I shook up. And what makes it so good, all these hypocrites, you can't call him a bitch. You can't call him a bitch because I didn't stop the fight. The doctors had to stop it. Oh, I'm so pretty. I shook up the world.
They pour into the Indianapolis Speedway by the hundreds of thousands to see 33 cars get away in the 48th running of the famed 500. The starters were the fastest qualifiers for the big race, and they set a blistering pace from the start. But tragedy is at the wheel right from the flag. As they come into the straightaway at the end of the second lap, Dave McDonald loses control of his juggernaut and starts to spin to the outside wall. It starts a chain reaction as others pile up. Cars are caught in the disastrous accident. Blinded, Eddie Sachs smashes into McDonald. Sachs is dead. McDonald dies later in the hospital. 3 more are injured, 1 seriously. The gay holiday crowd is stunned. Ronnie Duman scrambles over the infield wall, badly burned but still alive. Going back on the track after refueling, Corneli Jones catches fire. It's some moments before he can get free of the car and roll on the concrete to extinguish the flames. Last year's winner is out of the race, though not seriously burned. As they pass the 350-mile mark, it's a 2-car race between A.J. Foyt and Roger Ward. Then Ward has a pit stop that puts him behind, and Foyt is on his way to victory with a full lap advantage. He settles down to a steady 150 miles an hour as he pushes his conventional racer toward the finish. When he gets the flag at the end of the long grind, he has averaged better than 147 miles an hour, 4 miles an hour better than last year's all-time record. The fastest man on 4 wheels is Mr. A.J. Foyt. Ask Mrs. Foyt. The Forum of ancient Rome is as ageless as a beautiful woman. What better background for a showing of Italian fashions for spring? Under this black woolen dress is another of white piqué, For that matter, it's a 4-in-1. White top, black skirt, all black, black top, and in seconds, a white skirt. Or finally, all white. Do you follow us? A wide, no-nonsense band slashes dramatically across the flared skirt. In the race for milady's attention between Paris and Rome, it seems to be a dead heat again this year. A youthful cocktail dress with a ruffle of black tulle. Just the thing for early evening on the Via Veneto or on any other fashionable avenue. One of the most dramatic offerings is this caped affair. One moment it can be worn up against evening breezes, and the next moment worn down. With spring fashions on the scene, Easter must be getting near at hand. The lid is off on fall hat fashions. Despite the fact that summer has just made its debut, German designers are unveiling what they call the all-around look for the coming season. They claim that they are stressing simplicity, and that's news. Simplicity in women's hats, that is. Felt is a popular material. Witness this adaptation of the classic beret. Another style note is to show your pretty white feathers. So a tip of our hat to the German designers. They've kept things simple. In the same Atlantic City Hall where the Democrats chose their presidential candidates, there's another hot contest being waged, the Miss America pageant. There are lots of eyes on Miss Arizona. She's the ultimate winner. After being judged in evening gowns, they are presented in seaside attire, and Miss Arizona still looks good to the judges and to us. Meanwhile, Miss West Virginia is rounding those last curves to capture third place. Then the highly dramatic moment for the 5 finalists and for the spectators as the curtain opens on the quintet of hopefuls. The Miss America title is worth $75,000 to the winner, and that pot of gold goes to Vonda K. Van Dyke, Miss Arizona. The new Queen of Beauty receives her crown to begin a year's reign as the fairest in the land. There are floods of tears as usual, tears of joy. You know how it is. A beauty queen never rains, but it pours. Beatlemania has ceased to be a phenomenon and seems to have become a way of life. When the quartet with hair like unmade beds arrive in the Netherlands, it's the same story as in Britain and the U.S. People who value their sanity head for cover and let the teenagers take over. Later comes the inevitable climax to any Beatle visit, their performances before sellout audiences. When the Beatles get going, it's a question of who puts on the better performance, the quartet or the audience. To say they get carried away is putting it mildly, for it actually happens here. 14 of the fans fainted. It takes all kinds, the man said, to make up a Beatle audience. The team is due back in the United States within a few months for another series of appearances. But don't worry about tickets. They were sold out within hours after they went on sale. Their musical notes are dollar signs. Their first meeting with the American press brings forth an interview laced with quips and humor.
I got a question for you. You want to get a haircut at all? No. I had one yesterday. That's no lie. What do you make a face over? It's one of her legs. Great. Especially his poems.
New York City cops are hard-pressed protecting the Beatles at their hotel. On every side, there is hero worship that recalls the heydays of Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. With one Beatle bedded with a sore throat, 3 of the quartet take an airing in Central Park. There was absolutely no truth to the rumor that the zoo's laughing hyena was driven underground. Variety clubs of Britain had little trouble picking this year's showbiz personalities. They needed to look no further than the nearest transistor radios. So at the staid Dorchester Hotel, where crowned heads have often been dined, 4 crown princes receive an accolade from the show world's charitable organization. And we hardly need to mention that they need no charity except from exasperated parents.
I'd just like to say the same as the others. Thanks for the Purple Hearts. Silver!
And they did not sing.
Every American president has offered support to the people of South Vietnam. We have helped to build and we have helped to defend. Thus, over many years, we have made a national pledge to help South Vietnam defend its independence. And I intend to keep that promise.
LBJ backed up his words with troops and equipment, and thus 1965 began with a costly commitment. Bombing in North Vietnam started in the early months of the year, and U.S. casualties soared. The 23,000 American advisors in Vietnam were augmented by 100 aircraft, missiles, and 2 battalions of Marines. In March, the U.S. Embassy was bombed by the Viet Cong. Casualties were 2 dead and dozens wounded. For the first time, America's role in Vietnam was clear. Not mere advisors, we were now combatants in a full-fledged war. Images of blood and destruction began to become all too commonplace.
Pictures just released by the Department of Defense. United States forces in Vietnam are hit by disaster at the Bien Hoa Air Base. A spontaneous bomb explosion sets off a chain reaction, and one devastating blast follows another as fully armed bombers go up in flames. B-57s were poised wingtip to wingtip, ready to take off on a bombing strike when the Holocaust began. As fire and explosion rage, scores of planes are moved heroically to safety. Before the inferno died out, 40 aircraft were destroyed, 103 servicemen were injured, and 27 were dead. There were many quiet heroes made at Bien Hoa on this awful morning. Men who thought nothing of their own safety in saving the base from further damage. This is the greatest single loss of American lives in Vietnam since the military hotel explosion 3 months ago.
LBJ's response was to dive in head first.
I have asked the commanding general, General Westmoreland, what more he needs to meet this mounting aggression. He has told me, and we will meet his needs. I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested. This will make it necessary to increase our active fighting forces by raising the monthly draft call from 17,000 over a period of time to 35,000 per month.
But while the war fomented, racial discontent exploded at home.
6 days of rioting in a Negro section of Los Angeles left behind scenes reminiscent of war-torn cities. More than 100 square blocks were decimated by fire and looters, and few buildings were left intact. Firemen were harassed by snipers and brick-throwing hoodlums as they attempted to control the fires, many of which were left to burn themselves out. As the National Guard moved in to restore comparative calm, the losses by fire alone were put at $200 million. Firemen were later issued flak suits of bulletproof mesh to protect them from snipers who continued to shoot from rooftops. Nearly 3,000 were arrested, and authorities had to open abandoned jails to house those netted by the police. It took the appearance of 14,000 troops to bring an end to what both Negro and white leaders called insurrection by hoodlums. Civil rights leaders were quick to deplore the unbridled lawlessness, and Martin Luther King vowed to do all in his power to prevent a recurrence in Los Angeles or anywhere. Uneasy calm prevails in what is known as the Watts area of the city. A curfew was put into effect, and the entire section declared off limits to all but residents. The people who live here are suffering great hardship with no grocery, drug, or other service stores able to operate. It can't happen here? Well, it did. The elaborate power grid supplying electricity to parts of 9 northeastern states and Canada failed. And the question asked by 25 million people living in the affected area of 80,000 square miles was simply, how could it happen? And no one had an immediate answer. Dozens of cities blacked out. One moment, New York was glittering Gotham, the Great White Way ablaze. The next moment, only flickering candles, automobile headlights, and bobbing flashlights were probing a Stygian darkness. Nearly 1 million people were trapped in stalled subways as a full moon pushed fingers of light into the darkened streets. The bridges over the Hudson were their usual bejeweled cells. They were illuminated with power from New Jersey, a network that was not affected. Some cities got their electricity back within minutes, others hours. Some parts of New York City, however, went more than 13 hours before they had power once more. And Gotham was slow in recovering from her near paralysis. A third of the workforce stayed home, or finally got home, and train and subway service took all day to return to normal. Buses, when they finally limped to your stop, were jammed. Taxi drivers seemed to have gone underground and taken their cabs with them. But who cared? The lights were on again, and everyone wanted to tell you what happened to him the night the lights went out.
1965 saw the U.S. space program proceed at a steady clip. The Gemini mission, designed to test a 2-man rocket, had a number of successful firings, including the Gemini 5. This 8 days in space mission was a big morale booster, as was the flight of the Ranger spacecraft. The lunar probe sent back incredible live photos of the moon's surface in preparation for a U.S. landing later in the decade. But not everything went perfectly for NASA.
After a series of brilliant launches, the space team at Cape Kennedy runs into trouble. An Atlas Centaur rocket with a mooncraft aboard fails just 2 seconds after blastoff. 2 of its engines cut out. It falls back and explodes. The test was to shoot a surveyor spacecraft to a point where the moon would be next fall. At that time, an attempt would be made to put a surveyor on the moon to make tests for a man landing. The launching crew in a blockhouse 1,200 feet from the blast were trapped for more than 2 hours while fires were extinguished. Because of the elaborate safety precautions at the base, no one was injured. When you arrive on the moon for that summer vacation sometime soon and hail a cab, the driver may appear something like this. His vehicle will be a little more complicated and a little slower than the cabs meter merchants drive on Earth, but it will get you there over terrain that would make Times Square look like a country lane. If the space program goes according to schedule, something like this will be sent to the moon in advance of the astronauts' arrival. They will assemble the vehicle and set off to explore the unknown. Each wheel is powered by an electric motor, and the bug will have a range of 250 miles. The wheels have spiral blades for spokes, allowing the wheel to flatten out at the bottom like a soft tire. This gives greater traction, even on the moon's soft spots that are known to exist. To an astronaut, the lunar bug is something to moon over. Practically anything that has a motor and wheels is on display at the International Auto Show. And as you see, there's something for every taste. You can spend $20,000 or squeeze by for $1,500. Don't forget, they all have something in common. They all get you there. That is, they'll get you there if you can find an open road. This year, again, the domestic manufacturers are heading for a record year, 8 million units. Of course, you can order high-priced cars customized as they do for movie and TV productions. This one ran about $30,000. That was without the cigarette lighter. Everything operates by push buttons except the driver, we hope. There are also revivals. A famous car of the 30s, the Cord, is being made again. It was a front drive car that buffs dig as way ahead of its time. Now it's reincarnated. You might say they've found the lost Cord. It's a short reign, but a merry one for the queen of the hot rod show at New York's Coliseum. The uninitiate would hardly give some of these creations garage room, but to the customized car buff, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. This dragster, the Mortician, is what they dig, and they give it their grave attention. There's a German bug hidden beneath this formed mahogany body. Every inch of it is hand-rolled, and it took 8,000 hours to build. And just about as many hours went into Casper's ghost. It's enough to make you pale. Beneath all that chrome is a motorcycle. The last word in beach buggies, surfboard and all, or do you prefer this one-seater built for two? One of the most famous custom cars ever built is the Weirdo put together for the Munsters. It may not get many miles to the Goulon, but it's fine for a ghost-to-ghost trip. Topping the custom cars is the $70,000 look into the future. But remember, for that price, you get 2 cigarette lighters as standard equipment. This is the night that Hollywood holds the world spotlight, the annual Academy Awards, and the bestowing of the coveted Oscars has a glittering audience on hand to hear Audrey Hepburn announce the best actor. Rex Harrison, of course, receives his statuette for his role of Professor Higgins in My Fair Lady, chosen as the best picture of the year. Audrey was his leading lady. It's a popular choice with the crowd that next hears Sidney Poitier named the best actress.
Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews played opposite Rex Harrison in the stage version of My Fair Lady. Passed over for the movie role, she played Mary Poppins and parlayed the part of that bouncy governess into tonight's triumph. As Bob Hope put it, Hollywood is handing out foreign aid. Both winners are British.
Oh, this is lovely. I know you Americans are famous for your hospitality, but this is really ridiculous.
In a year of many outstanding movies, it was a chore to pick the winners. The night of the Oscars was a huge success. night when one dream is realized and 49 others are shattered. The finals of the Miss America contest. Girls from each of the states parade before a capacity crowd at the Atlantic City Auditorium. This is where the last political conventions were held. Everyone is in agreement that the scenery has improved. Then the curtain opens on the bathing suit parade. The field has been narrowed, but there's still a lot to see. That's the beauty of it. The title is worth a $10,000 scholarship and an estimated $80,000 for personal appearances. And Miss Kansas here has her eyes on that figure. Then the 5 finalists. Keep your eye on the gal in the center. That's Miss Kansas, and she's proving tonight that they grow some great crops out there. A Mississippi Miss left proves to be the runner-up as Miss Kansas gets the nod. Miss America 1965. Tonight, strangely enough, the winner does not burst into tears. A crown for the Queen, who will be acclaimed as the nation's reigning beauty. And it is beauty that is more than skin deep. Deborah Bryant, for that's her name, will enter Kansas University this year as a junior, and she intends to go on and study medicine. Anybody who will have Dr. Bryant as the family physician will be giving up certain fruits. Who wants to take an apple a day to keep this doctor away? In the coming year, Deborah will be one of the most photographed girls in the world. We couldn't picture anything nicer. To go on the record with your new collection is to do as Angela of London does. Have the model step out to the pop beat. It's not the temperature, it's the tempo that's hot. To get with it, says Angela, your hat must be in tune with the rest of your costume. A silver lame jacket, a hit of the show here in Manchester. For a matter of fact, it puts everything in focus. Optical art has spread to the jackets, topping bell-bottom slacks. No need to pity the poor sailor on a night out with these. The net result of Angela's way out look is to capture attention. So keep a stiff upper lip, men, and wait for spring. Meanwhile, in Paris, the eyes have it. The designers say it's about time someone did something about sunglasses. So now you can have a matched costume from toe to eye. When glasses like these begin to show up on the beaches this winter, we can just hear Aunt Matilda say, those girls are making spectacles of themselves.
Here are the hairstyles to go with the new Paris fashions. At least that's what they tell us. The hairdos are bejeweled, be-lacquered, and at times be-labored. This coolie clip is the unkindest cut of all. This upsweep is frozen in place once it's set. And if you don't like this one, why not put out feelers and see how hubby would like you in this? All in all, you must say that these styles are little gems.
Series. The Minnesota Twins are in their home park facing the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 7th and deciding game. Facing two, Sandy Koufax, pitching with only 2 days rest and no real curve today, but still the greatest. Koufax gets the support he needs in the 4th inning. Lou Johnson's drive hits the screen on the left field foul pole for a home run. Ron Fairley next up doubles into the right field corner. It's hit number 11 of the series for Fairley. Wes Parker Fairweather swings away just when Minnesota was expecting the sacrifice. Fairley races home with a second Dodger run. Bottom of the ninth, one out. Harmon Killebrew singles. Koufax had retired 12 straight until this hit, only the third of the game for Minnesota. Koufax has gone to his fastball. Earl Batty strikes out. With two down, the batter is Bob Allison. Strikeout number 10. Koufax and the Dodgers take the World Series. The Twins never got a man to third base against the remarkable left-hander. Los Angeles takes home its second World Championship in the last 3 years.
In 1965, we lost entertainer Nat King Cole, comic genius Stan Laurel, and newscaster Edward R. Murrow, as well as two great statesmen, Winston Churchill and Adlai Stevenson.
Brilliant lawyer, he campaigned successfully for governor of Illinois and ran far ahead of the Truman ticket when he won by a landslide vote. The self-styled amateur in politics dedicated his administration to plain talk, hard work, and prairie horse sense. To surprise professionals, his shirt-sleeved administration accomplished wonders. However, his eloquence and wit won him the unswerving admiration of millions of Americans, and that famous hole in his shoe became almost a trademark, epitomizing his disdain for rigid and formal pretentiousness. His campaigns of 52 and 56 were conducted with urbane poise and humor that brought the term egghead into the vernacular of the body politic. With the administration of President Kennedy, he became ambassador to the United Nations with cabinet rank and spokesman for the policies decided by the President and Secretary of State. Often in disagreement with those policies, he nonetheless pleaded the U.S. cause in the General Assembly and Security Council with an eloquence that won him rare international respect and prestige. He belongs with those who became great figures without holding the highest office. Governor, presidential hopeful, UN ambassador, he leaves a void on today's international scene.
Winston Churchill was ever in the van of those men who sought a better world, a world of freedom and human dignity where tyranny and oppression did not exist. When Paris was liberated, the architect of victory rode in triumph up the Champs-Élysées. To a man with Churchill's sense of history, this was his finest hour. Then unconditional surrender of the Germans, and he stood proudly beside his king, truly a man of destiny. He was Prime Minister again when he celebrated his 80th birthday with his beloved Clementine. Now Sir Winston, a Nobel Prize winner, he was host to Queen Elizabeth at number 10 Downing Street before relinquishing his seat in Parliament and retiring to his home at Hyde Park Gate. But through his writings and his many immortal phrases, the name Churchill continues to ring down the corridors of time. We here and now were privileged to know greatness.
At the Savoy Hotel in London, the movie's most famous clown makes an announcement. Charlie Chaplin is returning to motion pictures to direct Sophia Loren in a romantic comedy in the Chaplin manner. There are 250 newsmen and photographers on hand to hear the first details of the project that brings Mr. Chaplin back to movies after a 14-year absence. The new picture, which will start in January, is called The Countess and takes place on a luxury liner in the Far East. The star-studded cast will include Marlon Brando, and Mr. Chaplin expressed himself as thrilled at working with what he called the superb combination of Sophia and Marlon. This is only the second time Mr. Chaplin has directed a picture in which he did not star. The other one was produced in 1922. But you will see him in The Countess. He has written himself into a minor sequence. The movie industry is abuzz over this return of Charlie Chaplin. Universal Pictures will release the completed film, an event that promises to be one of the highlights of the decade. The Palace of the Queen has lived through many historic events, and it's our privilege today to witness one of the most earth-shaking. The audience outside Buckingham may give you an inkling of what's going on. Who's been getting in the Ulster's hair the past few years? Why, the boys who invented hair, the Beatles. Fresh from an audience with the Queen, they hold medals, indicating they have been made members of the most excellent order of the British Empire. The original announcement caused a minor uproar. A couple of MBEs returned their medals, but the raucous foursome accepted the honor quietly. That's more than you can say for the fans who stormed the palace gates. They made the state walls shiver with their moans and cries for the heroes. The Beatles, of course, have proven to be one of Britain's prime exports. They have brought in more foreign exchange than many industries. After all, they are an industry unto themselves, and the Queen saw fit to reward their economic contribution to the nation. The award entitles the Beatles to put the letters MBE after their names. And what could MBE mean but more Beatle encores? Yeah, yeah, yeah.